Good Friday morning, everyone. Today is again Friday, March. Geez, look, see, I'm still discombobulated. April the 17th. I like to throw that out there as a reminder because we are all struggling to keep our days separate and identify what they are. I am Jen Bordeaux with New Direction Family Law, coming to you with another segment of Family Law Uncorked. And I am joined today by Denise Dominguez with Inspired by Denise, as well as one of the attorneys at New Direction, Carly Baker.
Hi.
So thank you both for joining me this morning to kick off this Friday, talking about a more serious topic than some of the other family law uncorks we've had, but definitely one that is important all the time, but especially now during all the stay-at-home orders and shelter-in-place and being quarantined kind of deal. So definitely something we wanted to shed some light on, and that is, while we're spending time at home and with our families, it can be great. And most of the time it probably is. But there's also some situations where a toxic partner is involved, and you may not always know that maybe your partner is toxic, or detrimental to your safety, mental health, emotional health. And then, of course, there's physical abuse as well. So we wanted to talk about this, and that's why we brought in Denise to talk about being able to identify a toxic partner, and some tips to stay sane and safe during the quarantine, as well as Carly's going to be talking about domestic violence court, specifically here in Wake County, and some resources that are out there for us. So Denise, if you don't mind just kicking us off and telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the necessary work of toxic partners and narcissistic partners.
Thank you. So honored to be here with you ladies. So it all came about from my own 22-year experience of being in a relationship with a narcissist. So I always call it the silent abuse because there's no physical and there's no sexual abuse involved. So it can be harder to detect this type of abuse. And the other thing is that it comes very subtle. So that's the other part of it, not being so recognizable. So I was married for 22 years, have 2 children with him, and I didn't even know that I was in an abusive relationship. Because one of the main things is when you come from that, it's familiar. It seems normal. So after 22 years and a slew of traumas and dramas, I finally had the courage to leave. And when I left, it was with nothing but a futon couch and an air mattress, and moved from South Florida, where I'm from, to North Carolina here. And I did that with a lot of courage. It was very bittersweet crossing over the state line, but I did it to start all over again, to give myself a fresh start and a new life. And that's what I've done here. And it kind of dominoed into what I do now. Honestly, it really fell on my lap. It started with me trying to create my own business. I wanted the laptop life, which led me to a business coach, which led me to 2 questions that she asked me, which led me to, it was all these steps that happened for me to be able to be here and help women heal after narcissistic relationships. So that's the bullet point of how I got here. It's super exciting. And that's why I like to share with women. I like to show them what narcissistic abuse looks like, and that it's okay if you've been in this relationship for X amount of years and didn't even know that you're in an abusive relationship. I totally relate, because you're not alone in that. That is common. So that's pretty much how I got here.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure it's gotten easier, a little bit easier over time to discuss, and has helped many women identify a situation that they are in, possibly even men too, because this can go both ways.
Absolutely.
But to help them, give them some courage and strength to hopefully get to a better situation for themselves as well. So thank you for sharing. So we'll just jump right into it, because obviously this could be a very, very unsafe time for someone if they are stuck at home and don't feel like they have any resources, or the courage, or the strength right now to seek help. So Let's start by identifying what a toxic partner looks like, because you mentioned that you may not even recognize that you are, because of the situation and the mental and emotional state that you're in, and just being a part of this relationship, you even realize this is a toxic partner. So let's start by identifying, what does a toxic partner, a toxic relationship look like?
That's a great question, Jen. So what it looks like is there's a lot of emotional disconnect. So your partner is not connected to you emotionally. That's one of the first signs. There's this strive for the partner to pull them in emotionally, right? Like, come over here. I want you. I remember saying that to my ex-husband all the time. He was like, what do you want? I'm like, I want you, because there was just this huge disconnection between us. The other thing is they can be very ruthless and mean to their partner, and critical and belittle and judge and just so mean. I hear stories all the time of these women, and they share all these stories of whether, some are 22 years old, these stories of just downright, like, not only putting the knife in the back, but twisting it, just so mean to their partners. When you're in a relationship and you love someone, that's not love. That's a clear sign that this is toxic and abusive. And one of the other red flags is the lack of the compassion and empathy that they have for other people. So you can even take yourself out of the equation. Like, look at the relationships that they have around them. How do they treat, other people, their family, their immediate family, their parents, their siblings, their best friend, or whoever. And if you notice there's this lack of empathy and compassion, that's a huge red sign as well, that this person, that's the biggest thing, really. That's the biggest red flag. If they lack those two things, then they're toxic.
And so to tie that into the legal realm, our North Carolina statutes and our judges are trained, and lawyers all over the state are trained to recognize domestic violence, not just as physical violence. So people think, oh, I can't get a restraining order or a protective order because my partner has never hit me. And that's not the case. Our statute for what's called a domestic violence protective order doesn't have to include physical violence. It can be physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse, but it also very specifically states that continued harassment is a reason that someone can get a protective order. So I've gotten them when a partner would not stop calling and texting and, constantly just not leaving the victim that I was representing alone. It was like phone calls all day long, checking in, where are you? Who are you with? 17 missed calls in a row. That's domestic violence in a form of emotional and verbal abuse. And our courts and our judges are trained to recognize that as a form of domestic violence as well. So it doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be this verbal, emotional, and continued harassment that you could get a protective order based upon.
Yeah. I think the important thing is to share, like, what does that abuse that you're describing, Carly, look like? Like I said, I was in it for 22 years and didn't even know it, because I come from that type of an environment. And so I didn't know what emotional abuse was, what psychological abuse was, what financial abuse was. I didn't know any of those different forms of abuse. And that's what I like to share with women and men, to recognize, like, no, let's call it what it is. That is abuse. Just because somebody's not putting their hands on you or sexually assaulting you, there's so many other forms of abuse. So I think the key is to recognize that emotion, those pieces that you were just describing.
A lot of times when we go to court, some of the ways that we can show this are obviously someone who wants a protective order against their partner, which could be a 1-year restraining order, no contact order. They could show things like tons of missed calls in a row, or text messages that just over and over, why did you miss my call? Where are you? Who are you with? You need to check in with me, blah, 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 blah. Those are all forms of continued harassment. It can also look like If you're a financially dependent spouse, meaning your partner is the breadwinner and they want to track every single dollar that you spend every day. Why did you spend $53 at the grocery store? Why did you have to get gas twice this week? Where are you going? Those are forms of control and domestic violence and abuse as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's such a great point to bring up, because I think that's really key for people to understand, like, that's not normal behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, all good points. I mean, I think especially to the financial, I mean, all of it is important, but I think one of the things we probably think about least as domestic abuse is the financial side of it. And we, you know, in the firm, we get calls all the time, you know, that I get an allowance. I don't have access to any of the bank accounts. I get a certain amount of money and that's it, kind of deal. So how am I supposed to do X, Y, and Z? And you know, it breaks our hearts and kind of burns our biscuits all at the same time. One, because everybody needs to have that independence, and in a relationship both partners need to be fully aware of, you know, the financial situation, first of all, and have that freedom. In addition, it keeps people in an unsafe relationship because they don't feel like they have anywhere else to go, or you know, anything that they can do, because they know that some services require funds, or, you know, how do I get to stay somewhere else, or take the children, or how am I going to feed us? And so it is so scary for that person experiencing that. And that's why we're here to let you know that that is a form of abuse, and all the more important to seek those resources that we'll talk about that can help out here. So if you are, you know, at home right now with especially if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I may have, according to, you know, I mean, a toxic partner, what can you do to stay sane and safe right now, Denise, that, you know, when you're living with this person, you know, you don't want to risk them going off the handles. Obviously, you're scared, you're uncertain and stressed of what's going to happen. So what can you do during this time?
That's such a great question, because it can feel really like chaotic, and the feeling I'm getting is like heavy, like they feel like they're, you know, trapped. There's nowhere for them to go right now, because we're all in isolation. We're all told that we need to stay home. It's for the better of our health and all of those things. So it feels so, if you don't have the resources and the tools, and I'm so happy that you asked that, because I get to share that with them. It could drive you, like, literally, you know, you feel like you're going insane because there's no outlet. There's no way for you to get out. So one of the things that I always share when you're in that type of a sticky situation is to get a hold of your thoughts. That's like the biggest thing right there, is to get a hold of your thoughts. And there's so many tools that you can use to do that. So one thing I like to share with people is writing, like pen to paper, journal your feelings. If you're in a type of relationship where even that's controlled, you can journal your feelings so that you're releasing them and getting them out. You can rip up that paper, burn it, whatever you have to do, so there's no tracking if that's the type of controlling relationship that you're in. The main thing is that you're releasing those, you know, feelings that are boiling up inside of you, right? If you feel trapped, if you feel like, you know, this is never going to end, and he's constantly criticizing me, or whatever's coming up for you, that's a release. So journal your feelings. You can journal your plans, like your future plans, something that really lights you up and makes you happy. So I'm not necessarily talking about plans of, you know, exiting the environment or anything like that. You could talk about or write things that, when I get at it, when this is over, I'm going to the beach. I'm taking the kids to the beach. We're going to have, you know, a day trip, and that really will shift the energy of that person into a higher vibration of happiness and joy. And literally they're taking their mind to the experience of the beach. So that's one of the first things I wanted to share. Meditation. Meditation is huge. It's simply just sitting in silence and observing your thoughts. So much juiciness and so much stuff comes out of meditation. YouTube is a great resource. I always recommend YouTube for people. You can put in the search bar on YouTube anything that you want, meditation music, guided meditation, anything like that. And that's going to help, you know, the videos to come up, and you just pick and choose what you want. You know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's about taking time out each day for yourself to sit in silence. Take this time to spend time with the kids, like separate yourself from the toxicity in the environment and focus on the kids a little more. So another great thing to take your mind off of things is coloring, adult coloring, right? Take the colored pencils and get the adult coloring books. This is a great way to, not only you could do this with the kids with their coloring books and crayons, but yourself, for you to take your mind off of what's going on and go into a space of space, like emptiness. So those are some tips. And all of that boils down to connecting with yourself. All those tips I just gave is for that person to connect with themselves, which is really important when you're in this toxic environment, because what's happening is they are energy vampires. So they're sucking your energy out of you and they're claiming it, and it's exhausting. And a lot of women tell me, I'm tired. I'm just so tired from this environment. So using those tools that I just gave you is you bringing that energy back to yourself and connecting with yourself. So that's some tips there.
Yeah, and I'll add a few things from the legal world. A big thing is, if you are feeling like you are in immediate danger, you should absolutely call 911. And that is still available. The police departments are up and running. If you have been cooped up in your house for 3 or 4 weeks and you think that you are in immediate danger, go ahead and call emergency services. If it's not immediate danger, but you think you might be in danger, call the non-emergency lines for law enforcement. If you want some help with doing things such as safety planning, for instance, how can I find a place for me or for me and my children to stay if I want to leave this relationship? And it can be a marriage, it can be a live-in relationship, it can be a relationship where you guys don't live together. I would suggest searching for a domestic violence nonprofit or shelter. So in Wake County, that would be Interact, which is a domestic violence organization that helps domestic violence victims. You can call them anytime. I think we're going to link their phone number and everything, but they're still up and running at this time. So you can speak with a crisis counselor. You can talk about making a safety plan, and they can walk you through the steps of filing for a domestic violence protective order, which is a restraining order that can last up until a year. Courts are closed, but they are still hearing domestic violence cases every day. One of our attorneys at the firm, Chris Hicks, is in court today trying to get a domestic violence protective order renewed. So his client has had one for the past year. It's getting ready to expire, and they're going back to court today to ask the judge to renew it for an additional 2 years. He's in there now. They're hearing these cases every day still from 9 to 5. It's one of the few exceptions that are still rolling through. So I would say in Wake County, Interact is available. All over North Carolina, the Legal Aid of North Carolina's statewide hotline is still going through, and there are legal aid offices all over the state that will help anyone with domestic violence issues. You don't have to meet an income threshold or be below an income threshold to get help from legal aid for a domestic violence issue. In Johnston County, the shelter is Harbor of Johnston County. I think they are still up and running at this time. So there are resources still available. You can reach out to us, you can reach out to Denise, and we can try to help you find one that's in your area.
Yeah, those are great. Sorry, I'm muting myself when I'm not talking because my dogs have been asleep all morning and now they want to play right next to me. So that's Zoom life, I suppose. So I have it in the comments of the video here, linked to Interact as well as Legal Aid of North Carolina. So Carly, thank you for those tips. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I actually just had a call for this week. And I think both of you can speak to this. We're saying toxic partner for sure. And what does that line up with having a narcissistic partner? Because I literally had a call today or not today, but earlier this week that was talking about, setting up a consultation and dealing with a partner that is a narcissist. And do we have experience in dealing with a partner that is, or an opposing party that is a narcissist? 100% yes. I'm sure Carly can speak to several parties on the other side of the case that had narcissistic tendencies, as probably in some, our own clients. I mean, we work on both sides of that. So, Denise, can you, because when we were setting this all up, I like to be very transparent. We were talking about narcissistic partners, and you made the very good point of not everybody's going to know what that means. So it's a toxic partner. Let's talk about that. So can you just speak to a few of the traits of a narcissistic partner specifically? I know you mentioned, identifying a toxic partner and that emotional, being emotionally disconnected and everything. But people do throw that word around that they have a narcissistic partner. So can you speak just a little bit to that?
Sure. And they do. You're right. That is such a buzzword. And, I didn't even know what that was back when my best friend was telling me, Denise, don't you think he's narcissistic? And I'm like, and I Googled it and I came up with a quiz. And just because he didn't get all 10 of the answers, I was like, nah. So that's a great question, Jen. So narcissistic, it's a personality disorder. The thing is, it's not necessarily diagnosed because you have to know you have a problem to go get diagnosed. And narcissistic people do not know they have a problem because they blame everything, all their flaws, on other people, right? So it's not my fault that this relationship is going down. It's your fault, right? It's not my fault that I didn't finish and graduate from college. It's my parents' fault. There's always this shift of blame onto everybody else. They take zero responsibility for themselves. The other thing is so there's a difference between, hey, I want to shine and talk about myself versus, hey, everything is about me 24/7, 365. Every conversation, like, for example, Jen, we could be in a conversation, you tell me something great about you, and then I'll turn it around, me being the narcissist, I'll turn around and go, oh, really? I did da 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 da, and I'll make it about me, even though you came to me in the conversation as a celebration of some sort, right? You wanted to share your excitement of something, and I made it about me. So that's one of the biggest clues. They make everything about them, whether it's good or bad. So narcissists show up in two ways. They show up either as the victim of the story or the hero of the story. And this is where like trauma bonding comes in, because the trauma, I know we're not talking about that right now, but I'll just give a little example of trauma bonding, is where they purposely will hurt you, and then they will come in and save the day, kind of like push you off the boat, to make you drown. And then they throw the lifesaver and they save you. And now they're the hero, So anyway, they show up in either one of those ways. They show up either as the victim of the story or the hero of the story. So there's all these clues to look for when you're involved with somebody, even if it's in the beginning of a relationship, for you to know that they're showing up as this narcissistic person. So those are some red flags to look for.
Carly, anything you wanted to add from the legal perspective in working with either a client who very obviously has a narcissistic opposing party, or, how that works for case flow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of times and like Jen said, we've represented people on both sides, right? So if I have the victim spouse, a lot of times it's very hard for us to get the partner with the narcissistic personality to cooperate. They don't want to do things like voluntarily give us all the financial documents. They think there's no issue here. I've done everything I was supposed to do through our entire marriage perfectly, and you don't need to look at this. Mm-hmm. And that's simply not the case. We always need to take a look. Sometimes it's difficult in regards to custody. So someone may be like, he hasn't been a great dad or she hasn't been a great mom. And the person with this narcissistic personality will say, I don't know what they're talking about. I've been amazing. Here's all the great things I do. I coach their soccer team and I went to the school program, blah, 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 blah. But they don't see the issues in themselves, if that makes sense. They have a tough time doing some reflective looking at themselves, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's one of the toughest parts, is to get them to realize this relationship was supposed to be a partnership and it's not all about you. So that's something that we deal with all the time, really and truly, from both men and women. And it makes cases a little more difficult, but like I said, lawyers who do family law and any kind of domestic law, we see this all the time. So judges see it day in and day out and can recognize it too.
Yeah, and judges are not afraid to tear somebody up.
That's true.
We've heard it for sure. I mean, you guys have heard it. I just hear the other side of it. But this is all great information. So, Denise, what your business is inspired by Denise, and you have been able to take, your past situation, which I'm so happy that you were able to successfully get out of and are so much on the other side of it. And I love seeing your Facebook stuff. You're getting married this summer to, an amazing person you're so excited about. I'm so happy for you. So you got inspired by Denise. And from what I understand, I mean, that is you really help women that are going through these situations and help them find that strength and that confidence, identifying these traits and help them get to the other side. So can you speak a little bit about your services and how someone can get in contact with you if they are interested in speaking with you?
Absolutely. So I might, when you get into business, there's this ideal client. So my ideal client is a woman, because I speak about my own experience, right? But I do have a little bit of men clients that pepper in. But mainly women who have been divorced for a few years. And what's happening is they're back into the dating world and they're seeing this pattern of them attracting the same type of man as their ex. And they're like, oh, no way, I'm not doing that again. But I do have women who have come to me even before they have told their partner that they want a divorce. And they already recognize him as being toxic, narcissistic, and they want to exit the marriage, the partnership, as smoothly as possible. And so I've helped women do that. I've helped them with finances. One amazing story that I have is a younger woman. She was in her 30s, who is a physician here in North Carolina, and she was married to a physician. And she came to me in a time before she was even telling him that she wanted a divorce. So they're from another culture. And typically this culture, narcissistic behavior is normal in that culture. And so she came to me, we strategized a plan for her to get all of her money that was out of the country in her mother-in-law's name. It was an inheritance that was given to her. So we successfully got that into her name, into an American bank. She went through the divorce and it went smoothly. Those are her words, that it went smoothly. And this is a man who the abuse was escalating into the physical abuse. So I do have both sides of the stories that come to me, and I can help either one. So the woman who's been divorced and she keeps repeating the same pattern, these relationships, or the woman who is in the relationship and she wants to get out and she needs help with exiting in the proper way. Those are the ones that I send to you guys as well. And they come to me like that. I'm like, I have the perfect law firm for you. So that I do this through coaching. So changing the mindset, a little bit of what I was sharing earlier with the tools. I have them see things in a different way. I have them shift their energy. Everything is energy. And this is what a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people don't understand, is that when you're showing up in a certain way, this is why you're getting the results that you're getting, right? So everything outside of us is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of us. So what I share with them and teach them is how to shift their energy. Usually when we attract this narcissistic person into our life, we're showing up in this mother energy. And this mother energy is always wanting to take care, and she literally treats him like a child. And so when you look at the narcissistic behavior, it's very much child energy. And so I teach them how to shift that energy from that mother energy up into woman energy. And when they shift themselves energetically, the response around them is differently, including the toxic partner. So that may seem super far-fetched, but it actually happens because everything is energy. And so that's just a glimpse of how I help my clients come out of these divorces successfully, or stop attracting, you know, the same toxic relationships over and over again. It's really just about shifting the energy.
Well, you know, they always say that, you know, you reflect who you hang out with, or you attract to yourself the way that you portray yourself and things like that. So, I mean, that makes total sense. It's just another, you know, boost to that, I suppose. And so how can people, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Denise?
Well, my website is denisedominguez.com. And the other thing is I would love to invite your audience into my Facebook group. It's called Life After Narcissism. And in that Facebook group, I do trainings. I ask questions to get their mind, you know, the thoughts flowing. I educate them on all these pieces that I've been sharing, like, so that you can recognize, you know, how deep the narcissism goes. And I do video, like I said, video trainings. I invite them to, if they're in my group, they get like everything. So like the other day I did a free call. It was through my 12-week program called Empower the Woman Within. And sometimes I just like, hey, it's right now during this quarantine, we need some extra support. So I opened up the call for anybody who wanted to join. So when they're in my group, they get those notifications, so to speak, to all of these invitations, and also the trainings that I do inside of the group.
I didn't have myself muted. Sorry. I was just searching for the group. I was going to tag it in the comments, but I can't seem to find it. So please go back and put that, the link to that group in the comments of the video. That way anybody watching has quick access. And a good tool. I mean, all of us are in front of our computers and phones and whatever other screen more now than ever. So having just that sort of a support group to be able to learn from, read about, know you're not alone, there's other people experiencing this, is huge. So thank you so much, Denise, for sharing all of that, and all the help that you provide to people facing these situations. From our side at New Direction, our first step with us is an initial consultation. And as Denise was talking about, the planning and trying to figure out an exit strategy and how to safely do so and legally do so, that's something like that the attorneys at our office, Carly being one of them, can discuss with you and help you plan for. So just keep that in mind. There's help out there. We're here for you. We want to see you be happy and healthy and move forward with a life that you want and deserve. So stay safe, reach out to those resources. Should you be facing an issue like this, feel free to contact us. Of course, you can get us through all of our social media avenues, the website, our main office number, 919-719-3470. And actually next month we have Denise is going to be joining us again the beginning of May to talk about dealing with a narcissist after divorce. Because if they're a parent, Carly was talking about earlier about, you know, they're the golden parent and never do anything wrong. And well, we just know that's not the case because no parent's perfect. So we'll be talking about dealing with a narcissist after divorce. Denise also mentioned mindfulness and meditation as a resource for safety. A couple weeks ago, we had a yoga instructor who's the yoga boutique manager at a local gym here in the area. She did a very short, simple guided meditation, and she talks about different types of meditation and why it's important in all the physical and mental and emotional benefits. So feel free to check that out too as another resource. Stay safe and sane in the quarantine, and don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, Denise, New Direction, myself, whatever it may be, so that we can make sure you get the help that you need. So until next time, ladies, thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday. Thank you for joining me this morning, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.